Yo people, welcome back to the YouTube channel. You already know what time it is. It's time for another video. It's been a couple of days since I did a video, but I just needed to take a little break, a little moment to really just let the dust settle on what was a disturbing, dysfunctional season. But now, listen, the streams have still been going ahead with the weekly shows, and now the videos are back too as well. I've got a lot of videos lined up in the pipeline, so we're going to get them out. But listen, good to be back on videos and short form content, and we've got a lot of news, a lot of outgoings. The clear out has begun, of course. At last, the Pochettino announcement yesterday in terms of the 2.5-year contract, or the 2-year contract plus an option of a third, which is the club option. So they have the option to trigger an extra year, 2 years to 3 years, but basically 3 years, hopefully, for Pochettino. And he starts officially on the 1st of July, but he's basically doing all of the background work, behind the scenes work right now that is needed in terms of incomings, who's staying, who's going, making his definitive decisions along with those people on the board right now. And it seems like he's been in that process for weeks, because as soon as Pochettino was announced, suddenly now the news is just flying out in terms of Chelsea, especially outgoings. The phone call with Agate as well is the latest on that situation, is that he's had a phone call with Agate. He's made it very clear that Agate is one of his top tier targets for the number 6, for the defensive midfield position, to partner potentially Enzo Fernandez, or even to anchor the midfield in the midfield three if they were to go and go an extra mile and get a Caicedo, etc. But when you look at all of the DMs he's had, the Wanyamas, he's had obviously the Schneiderlins, and even Dembele's, who was very, very, very underrated at Tottenham, very combative individual, great interceptor and tackler, but also a brilliant ball carrier. He's had a very strong base to work from in midfield to provide that balance for the fullbacks to bomb forward, whether that's Carl Walker and Danny Rose, or maybe next season it'll be Gusto and Lewis Hall, who knows, whipping those balls into the box. He wants a stable base to work from to balance out that midfield and potentially unleash and unlock, not unlock because he's already been unlocking doors, but Enzo Fernandez could get a little bit more breathing room, and I would love that. I would love for Enzo Fernandez to be able to just not roam freely. He's not going to be a luxury player that kind of just shackles her off and doesn't come back and defend. We saw that Argentine spirit in the World Cup, but he will be able to move further forward, hopefully, and play those final passes even more. We know his long distance passing is incredible, it's immaculate, but I would love to see more final passes. I'd love to see more long shots from him as well on the edge of the area. Just more contributions going forward attacking wise, because I think Enzo, we've only scratched the surface of what we can see from this player. The fact that he's been probably our best, one of our best players since he's joined in a very dysfunctional, dismantled Chelsea team that has gone through a couple of managers as well. The fact that he's doing that under these circumstances and he's getting all these plaudits about potential captain, of course he'll probably have to learn the language, but he's talking, leadership's been mentioned, all these things. The sky hopefully is the limit for this guy, and I'm so glad we locked him in early doors in January, because I promise you this guy could go and play for Man City, could go play for Real Madrid, could go play for the top teams who are performing at their peak right now in the pinnacle. So really, really happy. And it seems like Agate is the primary target. Of course, release clause has to be triggered, £52 million, €60 million, or Chelsea will try to offer players. It seems like Sporting Lisbon will not take Adacho Fofana or Andre Santos and all these other players that have been linked with swaps for loan, unless they have an option to buy. And Chelsea probably won't provide an option to buy on players they've only just signed if they really believe in the talent. So a little bit of a sticking point there, but it seems like, according to reports, that Agate favours a move to the Premier League. Obviously, we don't have any European football qualification, but hopefully that's not too much of a hurdle. And yeah, he sees the Premier League as a more of a difficult challenge than Ligue 1, which it is, in my opinion. Although Ligue 1 be very physical, I think the Premier League right now is as competitive, as challenging as it's ever been, with all of these teams fighting for the top 7, 8. So he prefers to try and, apply his trade here. Brilliant news. Let's see if this gets over the line. I do want to get on a everything you need to know about Agate kind of episode done. Remember, we did quite a few of those last summer from a real expert that follows Portuguese football. That could be coming soon. But at the moment, we've spoken about Agate loosely. There has been some weaknesses that have been flagged up about the player in terms of his aerial dual success rate. Is he able to win the ball aerially as much as we'd want him to complement an Enzo? In terms of his build-up play, is he able to receive the ball in tight spaces and kind of start those initial build-up first phase level of play? Because obviously Enzo is not really a specialist in that regard either, although he's done very well for us, to be honest, in that 6th position, mainly on the ball, but off the ball, of course, we want that balance. And other questions as well, scanning and all these little intricacies and details that we're never going to really know unless you're watching week in, week out. But some brilliant performances have been put in from him against Benfica this season. He's obviously played in European level against the Arsenals, the Tottenhams as well, Champions League and Europa League. So let's see how it goes. But that looks like the first piece to the puzzle for Poch. Now, that's one incoming that could be coming towards its final stages. But boy, is there outgoings. boy, is there outgoings. Ever since this Pochettino announcement dropped, and really Loftus-Cheek was already spoken about here last week in terms of advanced talks and negotiations with AC Milan. Fabrizio has only furthered that today by saying, listen, this is a deal that's really moving forward now. Loftus-Cheek looks like he's willing to take a lower salary as well, a little bit, because we know at Chelsea's on around about 150k a week. Maybe AC Milan wouldn't want to pay that, so it seems like he's willing to take a little bit of a decrease. He is expiring his contract 2024, as are many players. Kova, Kante expiring this summer, Mason Mount 2024. There's so many players expiring next year, Pulisic, Ziyech. So these players have to leave really, or they have to be signed up on new contracts, because we're not trying to let go of players for free in an FFP situation when we'd like to balance our books a bit more. So Loftus-Cheek looks like he's on his way to AC Milan, as we said last time. But there's more. There's more. Feed me more. I can't wait. Like I said, these outgoings are they're keeping me alive right now. I love it. Inject this into my arms. Put this into my veins, my bloodstream. Also, Pulisic. We're seeing talk about Pulisic going to Juventus for around about £20 million. Now, that's reported by ESPN. And listen, it's just loose rumours at the moment, scratch along the surface. But it does seem like a move that would make sense for both parties. Of course, like I said, his contract is running out next summer. But also, he just hasn't been able to put down consistent body of work at Chelsea. Now, there was clearly potential there. If you looked at that lockdown period, Pulisic was scoring goals. He was almost carrying the attack alongside Olivier Giroud in that period. He's formed a great relationship with that target man in terms of putting the ball into his feet, bouncing it off of him and going and being a runner off of him and getting those goals left foot, right foot. Some really big performances away to Liverpool, etc. But since then, we haven't seen enough of him. And a lot of people say, listen, he's unfairly treated. He hasn't been given the chances. But also his own injuries and his own inconsistencies with his fitness stops him from reaching the pinnacle of consistency and top level performance. Because if you continuously keep pulling up injured with little hamstring strains, etc., calf injuries or whatever, you can't be consistent on the pitch. It's not possible, because you are a liability. And then when you're out injured, someone could take your place and could find some consistency, i.e. a Mason Mount has played in that front three over the past few years, inside forward under Tuchel, and now suddenly you can't get back into the team. You're only limited to off the bench appearances. And then you're not really in a rhythm or a groove or a momentum, and then it's a struggle. So I do sympathise with him a bit, because he has got talent, but he's not one of those players that I'm trying to keep. A sale here is fantastic. Like I said, he's got 1 year left. He is injury prone. And 20 million, listen, for me, a lot of people will be like, negotiate, maybe a Vlahovic swap. I don't want us to get bogged down into swap deals this summer. We tried so many swap deals. This is not American sports. We tried it last summer, try and swap this player for this player for this player. And it delayed negotiations, delayed deals. And it really does waste a lot of time. For me, Pulisic's a player we obviously want to sell. Don't know how big the market is for him. Obviously, his marketability is brilliant in America. That always brings value to a club in terms of shirt sales. But please, we haven't got time to waste. I think 20 million, listen, it might be a little bit on the under. You maybe look for a 25 or a 30. But for me personally, with a year left, injury prone, and really not playing at all for us. Like, he is just getting the smallest of cameos. He's on the peripherals of the squad. Let's just get rid. Let's just sell, quick sell 20 million onto the books. If we have to raise 100 million, which according to some reports we do for FFP, 100 million in sales, we will do that, no problem. We will do that easy peasy. If Ruben Loftus-Cheek is hopefully commanding maybe a 15, 12 million, probably from AC Milan, I don't think it's going to be a 20 or 25. Maybe, hopefully it's a 15 a minimum. Cool. Now we've got 35 million on the books there from those two, and we haven't even gone to the other sales. So happy days, get it done, keep it moving, because you know, we need to be moving on. We've got Madueke, we've got Mudryk, Sterling's going to be here next season. We saw his comments. I mean, wow. Park the transfer news for a second. Sterling's comments were damning. He said that Pochettino is finally what we kind of need as a manager in terms of the big personality, someone that the players are going to respect, somebody that knows what they want. I mean, my God. What a damning indictment of the two previous managers that were here in Lampard and Potter. But it doesn't surprise me, because we know a lot of seniors were quite bemused and quite confused and disillusioned under the last two managers. And I think the results speak volumes in that. So it's not a shock. But he will be here next season, Sterling. He's excited about Poch. And the other player that we continue to always have to talk about and doesn't shock me, is Mason Mount. And there was an article that kind of revealed the truth behind his contract negotiations, as he also nears an exit as this, you know, spree of exits continue. And Mason Mount, it went on to talk about, of course, how the contract negotiations have kind of gone through their stages before the World Cup. It started off with Mason Mount looking like he was going to agree, and it was more Egbali and Todd Boehly that were leading the negotiations before the recruitment team had been fully formed and before those job titles had changed in terms of Paul Winstanley, in terms of Christopher Vell, in terms of these guys, Lawrence Stewart, all coming into the fore and coming into the frame. It was mainly Todd Boehly and Egbali, and there were a lot of issues on image rights. It wasn't just about money, it wasn't just about wages. Of course, Mason Mount wants to earn a competitive wage, a wage that he feels he demands based on his performances over the last couple of years, based on his availability and consistency over the last couple of years, because that's another thing that's been heavily in his favour until this season where he had injuries. But it was image rights as well, which was a problem. And before the World Cup, it looked like as if Mason Mount was going to have a new contract and it was going in the right direction. And then after the World Cup, that offer was pulled off the table, according to this report from Football London, I think Bobby Vincent. And that contract was pulled off the table, and suddenly the circumstances and the terms of the deal had changed, and there was no offer on the table. And that's when Stanley and Vavell and other negotiators came to the table to take control, and the terms weren't quite the same to what the agent and Mount were previously agreeing on. And that's because they were moving in a different direction. And then it was a one-year offer. A one-year extension on the 2024 contract to take it to 2025. And that was rejected by Mount. Doesn't want to sign a 1 year. He wants to sign a longer length contract. And of course, there were reports previously about maybe the contract being too long and the contract being a 7 or 8 year contract as well for amortization. And listen, that was, well, not even amortization because the player didn't cost anything, but in terms of, just trying to lock down the player for a long period of time. So, we kind of have ultimate control over his future. I don't think he was too keen on that either. A normal 4-5 was probably what he was looking for, and the right wage and image rights and all these things. And then it progresses into, okay, well, now that 1 year's been rejected by Mount, there is just no other offer. And this is where he changes agent, Neil Fallings, I think, changes agent. We saw that Mount changed agent, and then it becomes Manchester United are interested, and Arsenal are interested, and Liverpool have done some groundwork behind the scenes, and they're interested. Now Man United seem to be leading the race, and now Mount is in a situation where, listen, we can't really read too much on the emotions. I know there's videos going around on socials about, he looked a bit down and emotional and Chilwell with the arm around the shoulder at the bridge. You can't really tell. Just a couple of days ago, we saw Felix showing Stamford Bridge on his stories, and he's been very quick to point to the fans in celebration. He's been very quick to show how much he wants to be here and how much he loves being at Chelsea, and he felt like he'd found a new home. Well, I'll be damned. Atletico Madrid CEO comes out and says, we've just found out that Felix is coming back. Chelsea and Pochettino is not in his plans, and we've just found out this situation over the last 24, 48 hours. So you can't predict anything on stories, on little things, little moments, 5-second moments, 1 second moments. You can't predict anything from this in terms of players. For me, what Mount and a lot of those players probably at the end of that game felt was, we don't really know what's going to happen. Now, I think it's more likely that he leaves, but it's not done, it's not finished, but I think it's more likely that he leaves. The reason why I don't think it's done and it's finished, because Pochettino does want to keep Mount. That's the report. The report is that Pochettino would rather keep him. He obviously didn't want to keep Felix. And Felix will be going back to Atletico Madrid. So that holds weight, that holds weight. If you're backing the manager, and we clearly are, Agate, big time we're backing him by going for Agate, early doors up against PSG, not waiting around. Not getting Felix, that's a Pochettino move. He said he doesn't want to keep Felix. He's not part of the plan. We know Todd Boehly was a massive fan of Felix, massive fan. And obviously he's got that relationship with Mendes as well, agent. So they wanted to build the team around Felix, we heard many a time, whilst we were still searching for a manager in Nagelsmann, and we were looking at Enrique, and the talk was they want to build the team around Felix. But you could never, and it shouldn't have ever been the case where we decide on building around Felix until you hire a manager and hear what he has to say. And it's very important that we collaborate with the manager and listen to what the manager wants. I'm not saying we should go back to the days of everything the manager wants you get, because otherwise, if we had done that last season, we would have no Levi Colwill, and we'd have, he'd be permanently transferred away, etc. Which was maybe Tuchel's, decisions as a manager. So you've got to have that collaboration, those discussions, but you can't go against, if they flat out don't want to work with that player because that doesn't suit the ideology or the methodology of what they want to do, you can't then bring in a player that they've said is not really part of the plan and then bring them in, and then if the plan fails, crucify the manager and say the plan didn't work. What's going on? That doesn't make any sense. That's a massive contradiction. So you have to make sure that you tailor the players to the manager. If the manager wants a really expensive player that you don't really think is worth the money, but has certain attributes as to why he wants that player to fit his system, then you go and get maybe a cheaper alternative that you've scouted that the manager wouldn't know about because he's not a scout. Then that is backing the manager. You don't have to, unless they absolutely demand this A target. We must, because the A target is just astronomically clear of any other option. But that is the conversation, that is the collaboration at hand. If there are alternatives, you show them those alternatives, and maybe they actually brighten up on the idea and say, you know what, yeah, you're right, let's go and get this player. So it is a collaboration. It's not, it's a democracy. It's not everybody just rules, the kingdom, because then that's how you mess up your club structure for the long term, by just constantly buying players for manager. And if they don't work out, then you've got a mixed bag squad, which is what Chelsea have. So there is a balance to this. But in terms of Felix, to kind of finalise on this video as well, with Felix, I still rate Felix. I still think Felix is a wonderful player. There are definitely flaws in his game in terms of what he can contribute maybe off the ball. And that's something that a luxury player can give you. And that's something that Poch obviously doesn't work with. And that doesn't surprise me. When Poch comes in, I think my prediction video said that Felix won't stay. And Poch was my first choice. So I can't be a hypocrite. As much as I would have loved Felix to get another opportunity maybe on a loan deal, I'm not surprised that Chelsea are not willing to fork out 70, 80 million pounds on a permanent transfer, especially when the futures of Mount and Havertz are still up in the air. Gallagher, players that I would sell in terms of, Gallagher in particular, Kai Havertz as well. But there's no guarantee you can move those players on. The player has to agree to leave. As we saw in the January transfer window of Gallagher, we had a great bid offer from Everton of around about £45 million, but Gallagher rejected Everton. We do forget sometimes that players can reject clubs. They don't have to go, and they're on contracts. So if we can't move Kai Havertz on, even though I would personally move him on, if we cannot find a club that is willing to pay the wage that he wants, or the fee that we demand that we should get, because let's be honest, we shouldn't be taking 10, 15 million for Kai Havertz. Somebody needs to come with proper money. I'm not saying 70, 80 or 60, but 40, 50, something respectable. Let's not overpay for players in this current inflated market and then get absolutely robbed in the same breath. Because maybe, just maybe, Poch could actually get something out of him. But I'm bored of having that conversation of Kai Havertz round 3 or round 4. So that's the situation. And it's like, for a team that have an inflated amount of numbers in the squad, it would be crazy to go and get a non-priority player in Felix on a big transfer like that, especially if Poch is not in tune with the player in terms of what he wants to do and what he wants to put out there. So listen, the priorities remain the same for me as they always have: goalkeeper, midfield and striker. Those are the priorities. When you take a look at the chances that we had at Old Trafford in that first half, the chances that are being missed by Mudryk, by Kai Havertz, those chances need to get bagged next season. They need to be bagged. We need to be having a striker that, yes, can get you 20 goals, but can also contribute into other areas of the game and can help our chance creation. People talk about, Felix in terms of quality depth for Nkunku. I get it. And I'm not here to tell you that we shouldn't have quality depth. I love that. But we're not in Europe next season. We're in one extra round of the Carabao Cup. The FA Cup doesn't start till January. The January window is open again. And on top of that, let's be very clear. The starting 11 is not good enough. Forget about the depth. The starting 11 is not done. The striker, that's a starting 11 striker that you need. The midfield, potentially 2 midfielders if Kante's leaving. That's 2 starting 11 midfielder quality level that you're looking for, because you've got your depth pieces in Carney, in Andre Santos, etc. So, and the goalkeeper, you're looking for starting level quality. So that is minimum, really. Now, listen, with a bit of scouting, you might be able to get an Alvarez or etc. someone like that from River Plate, and maybe we do an incredible deal. But for starting quality, you're looking at 50 million upwards for these positions. So, does it make sense to go and get a Felix? And this is coming from a Felix fan. This is coming from someone that really, really rates Felix. And make no mistake, Felix could go and join another Premier League club and do very well. I saw shades of talent. I saw moments of individual quality from Felix in this Chelsea team that, like I said, is a very harsh Chelsea team to judge any new player coming in. It's why I don't judge Mudryk too heavily. I do question why Mudryk is shooting so crazy at the moment, when I've seen in training clips his shooting technique has been on point. I do question, some of the performances, but I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to definitively, judge a Mudryk in this environment, in this situation with 2 managers, or even 3 if you want to include Bruno. And the same applies to Felix. But, like I said, Mudryk is our player, Felix is not our player. And to make him your player, you need to have, you need to have a clear reasoning in terms of the grounds, and being a depth piece for Nkuku when you've got starting 11 players in certain positions that are effectively your spine, effectively key positions, not shadow strikers or second strikers or floaters. We got quite a few of those, and we've had quite a few of those over the years. Right now, we're looking for key components in an 11, leadership traits in an 11, leaders. So it's a different ball game that we're playing. And like I said, the minimum, the maximum, I'd like 3-4 max in the door. And I think after that, close the window incoming wise and go for exits, because we as a fan base are very, very retail therapy. We're very Central C. We love new players. This Chelsea fan base will get way ahead of themselves this season, and suddenly what was meant to be a maximum of 3 to 4 players will become 5, 6, 7, because players just keep propping up and people just get really giddy. We need to make sure that this is a low-key season incoming and a very high-key season outgoing, and that is that. That's my feelings on the Felix situation. I wish him the best of luck unless he joins a rival, but make no mistake, there's ability there, and don't be surprised if under the right coach, right manager, this guy pulls up some trees next season in the Premier League. That wouldn't shock me, because I think there's something there. But for us, we got priorities, and it's not a stick that I'm going to beat Poch with at all. Now, if he tells me that we're keeping Lukaku, that would be the first time that I majorly disagree with Poch. Or if he's building the team around Gallagher. Make no mistake, I will disagree with Poch on things I don't agree with. Same I did with Tuchel last summer, with the Gallagher versus Gilmore situation, or with the Levi Colwill situation, with the Aubameyang versus Gabriel Jesus situation. Just because I wanted and want the manager, I'm delighted to have him, it doesn't mean I'm going to naturally just say, oh, whatever they do is okay, or whatever they do I agree with, because managers do get it wrong, and everybody's got their opinions. But Felix is not the one I'm going to die on the hill for. It's just not, that's not worth it in regards to Poch. It's too early doors. Man's only just come through the door. He's only just arrived, and we wanted definitive decisions from a manager. We wanted a manager with a plan and knows what they're doing. Can't be a hypocrite now just because what they know what they're doing is not aligning with you. Unless it is a player that you are just over the hill for, or it's a player that you just absolutely can't stand, like I said with Lukaku. But do you really have that emotional connection to Felix like that? Is it really that deep? You have to ask yourselves. If it is, then fair enough. But for me, it's not that deep with this one. It's not that deep with this one. Because, listen, Nkuku's playing that role. Enzo could be pushed further forward as well. You never know. In a 3-man midfield, Enzo might become your most advanced midfielder in a different system. If he goes 4-2-3-1, maybe he'll go 4-3-3 at times. Enzo could be your furthest forward, a Caicedo and a Ugarte midfield. Suddenly no one's thinking about Felix maybe. So, listen, there's many ways this could go. He could develop Madueke, he could develop Carney. These guys could be more creative for you next season, create chances. So, like I said, let's see more of what he's doing before we go crazy. But listen, that's been the video. That's been the news. Big up your damn selves. Make sure you smash up the likes. Make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. In a bit, people. Peace.